What is up, everybody? Thank you for joining. I gotta put these settings on. Live. What is up, everybody? MuseMe TV. We are back. Episode 149. First of all, I am so sorry. I have been slacking and I have not been putting out any episodes this week, but today we have a special treat, everybody. We have Jon in the studio, everybody. Give it up for Jon.
That's right. Hi.
Yeah, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Jon, I have so many questions for you because I know nothing about you.
Sure. Yeah, this is fantastic. It can be sort of full impromptu kind of. Let's figure it out.
Let's find out as we go along. So
yeah.
Let's start off by, I know you, I actually first met you, well, I first knew about you through the Comic-Con and con scene.
Sure.
That's how I first found out about you.
Absolutely.
Ended up knowing that you own or are a part of Gamers Anonymous.
I am the owner of Gamers Anonymous.
I like the little tag that you put on your Facebook, president of Gamers Anonymous.
You know what's great is when we first started the business, I was just owner. Then we switched over to a corporation where my technical title is actually president.
President,
yes,
nice.
That is my official title.
You guys hear that? We got President Jon in the studio.
That's right.
And also, you guys recently opened up a gaming center.
Yes, not but 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago tomorrow, as a matter of fact. New Game Plus directly next door to it. We'd been running GA for a very long time. I've owned it for almost 13 years at this point. And we've always been really interested in doing, gaming events and gaming, related gameplay sessions in the store.
Okay.
But our room was always kind of limited, and we thought ultimately the best next step would not be to expand the retail business, but like the event business. So now we have a place where we can hold tournaments for Smash Brothers or Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Madden, League of Legends. We've expanded to like PCs now, board games and tabletop and card games and all that stuff too.
Dope. So anything pretty much esport related, you guys are trying to jump into that door.
Correct.
Nice. Okay, so this is obviously a question that is on everybody's mind. It's on mine.
Sure.
COVID, and you're opening up a shop.
Oh, trust me, man. Well, so we signed the contract in like late February.
Okay.
And while we couldn't exactly cancel the contract, we did get a chance to push it back because the whole COVID thing obviously messed up literally everything we had planned with a social business. Ultimately, what we determined is, can we still do this in a time of COVID? Can we do it safely? And we've really made sure to hunker down and make sure that all measures were taken care of for spacing and distancing. And, things are 6 feet apart. We have a limited capacity in the building. You got to wear a mask. We have disinfectant, that we spray everything down at. We've got wipes and, a lot of measures to take.
So you guys are taking the proper precautions
with
opening this
correct.
New
as many
business.
as possible, considering. Yeah, it's a huge bummer that it had to happen this way. But, we do what we can. We do what we can safely. And hopefully it can still be enjoyed to a degree.
And especially, a lot of people kind of love this kind of aspect, like being able to interact with other people in the gaming center.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, it's always fun to go online,
sure,
and click on your friends, and we're hanging out, talking on a good a Skype call or a Discord or whatever.
Right.
But that interaction with the two where you're just like, what are you doing, man? Get going.
Oh, there's nothing like it. The convenience of online is paramount to what we do, at this point. But there's something about looking over and a friend has killed you in, Borderlands or Rocket League or gotten a goal, whatever it is. And when you see somebody locally and you're having a good time, killing your friends and they're just 1 seat away from you, there's something just special about the aspect of in-person social gaming.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what kind of gave you the idea to just go into it? You're just like, it's that time. We need to do it. As I think there's only at the moment I remember there was only 2 gaming centers open here in New Mexico, in Albuquerque.
Yeah,
the Golden Guns Gaming.
Correct.
And then I remember there was one off of Montgomery called Knights.
Raid Night.
Raid Night.
Raid Night.
Which isn't around anymore, right? Correct?
They did close down fairly recently, and I can give you sort of like the abridged version of the story. The owners actually contacted me early last year, the owners of both Raid Night and Golden Gun Gaming, and said, hey, you've got a big, strong gaming presence in Albuquerque. Do you want to buy the businesses from us? And we looked into it. We looked into what it takes to, buy a gaming center, and ultimately we determined that Raid Night might not be the best fit for us, but we did look into Golden Gun, as we actually had a history with the previous owner, Ryan Golden. And so what I decided to do last summer is co-manage the business for a couple months and sort of put my spin on it, my twist, and sort of see if it's something that we were able to do.
Okay.
Now, Golden Gun Gaming is a huge, wonderful spot. The problem is huge also comes with a huge price tag. The overhead to run a place like that ultimately was too daunting and too expensive for me to be able to purchase from them.
Okay.
So while we really liked the idea, and we've retained a very amicable relationship with the owners, we thought, well, we want to do something that's sort of on our end, on a smaller scale, a little bit more manageable, but also why not do it next to GA? Why triangulate our position and, have something spread out from around town? What if you had Gamers Anonymous and then directly next door we had a gaming center?
Right, where it's just like conveniently walking distance, correct, literally right next to each other.
Literally next to each other. Yeah, you open up the door, you turn left, and you're there.
You're there.
So we thought it would be a really good matchup to say we want this complementary business model. And we'd been toying with the idea of opening something at that spot for years. We'd just sort of been discussing, well, what if we did like an arcade? What if we did, something similar to a Japanese gaming center with the crane games and gashapon machine and all kinds of
Dance Revolution in there.
Precisely,
everything.
Yeah. We really examined that and the feasibility, and then after the Golden Gun experience, I thought, you know what, we can actually do this now that I've gotten some knowledge under my belt. This might be the time to do it. So we looked into it all last year, and then finally bit the bullet in February, and then of course the world shut down.
Dang. Well, I give you big props and commendation because you guys still going at it strong, still trying to make it happen. And again, you don't know what the next step of COVID is. Like,
correct.
Whatever happens, whatever comes up next, I mean, it could be a big money boosting thing where like everybody ends up like, oh, we got vaccines and guess what? Everything's open again.
Right, sure. Yeah. It's a gamble as it is. Opening a business in general is a gamble. And we thought, how much more is there to lose ultimately, once this started happening? And our property owners were gracious enough to help us push this whole thing back by like 6 months and sort of gauge what the climate was like here in New Mexico. And while it's not optimal, I think it's still possible.
Yeah. Especially compared to other locations. I mean, it's still very, very much a hot spot in other places around the United States. So it's just like, yeah, there was no way that's probably going to get open here soon. But in New Mexico, there were, I guess you can say we kind of been screwing up a little bit with the way
couple weeks have been pretty rotten.
Way the COVID numbers have been going up and stuff. Sure. But I mean, it's another thing that we kind of have to experiment with and try to get going in a sense of like, you never know what's going to happen.
You never know, and that's kind of the bottom line. Is I don't want to ever risk anybody else's health, but and that's the thing is why we take the precautions, but. I also wanted to say we can find a way to safely do this, take as many precautions as possible, and just, if we're responsible about what we're doing, what more can we do?
There you go. So. That's awesome, man. That's so cool. So it's safe to say you're a pretty big nerd.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, you're in the right place, obviously.
Sure.
So
there's great stuff everywhere. Yeah,
that's where especially trying to like venture out and find new avenues for this stuff. So
yeah,
I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're really excited to be a part of just the gaming scene in Albuquerque, and we just want to celebrate it with the other gamers here.
Nice, nice. Well, unfortunately, it's some troubling times that are going around, though. I mean, especially with the election season coming on, and the way that like. I feel, unfortunately, the country's getting a little too divided at this point.
We're having a hard time keeping ourselves united, just as people. Yeah,
it's kind of weird. I don't know why, but I was listening to Megadeth today, and there was a lyric off of the album, the song "Holy Wars," where a country that's divided surely will not stand, and that's kind of feels like what's happening right now.
Sure.
How do you feel about the whole situation with, I guess you can say, two pretty radical groups forming for two different sides? It's kind of crazy. Like, Proud Boys, Antifa, crazy left, crazy right. I just want to be a centered person.
It's complicated because there's no great answer. There's no universal answer. There's no blanket answer. I think when it comes down to what is best for the country, finding a way to come together, however that may be, whatever side that may be, and I think it's possible with either side's positions with the right leaders in place. And I don't know who that's going to be. Yeah. I certainly couldn't say one way or the other. But, how do we care for people? How do we care for each other? How do we, lead by example that we want to get better instead of saying, I want to find people to oppose? Because that can happen on either side, too.
Very true.
And so what is it that makes us find a common ground? What is it that makes us, find peace together? I don't know what the answer is. But ultimately, if one of the two sides can find a way to do that, that's what I want.
Do you think something like that would ever happen in our lifetime? I mean, it's kind of getting pretty bad to the point where if one person is elected, the other side is ready to do very bad things. Like, and in a sense of like, oh, well, I want recounts, or oh, I don't even think that this election is actually truthful, or it might be rigged, or Russia has a big involvement in it. Like, right. What is going on here?
I think the opposition on both sides has become so divisive that no matter what one side does, the other side often will find a way to demonize it, and I think that can be counterproductive to the best interest of the greater whole, who actually wants to see just good in general.
That's true.
And not that I think radical ideas can't make progress, but I think they also have a very fine line of diminishing it as well.
Very true. Yeah. How do you feel? Well, how are you staying level grounded in this whole everything that's going on? The COVID, the election, the pandemic. I mean, there's so much. They're so bad, but
2020 in general. You're asking.
You know what's crazy though? Because in the beginning of 2020, people were very optimistic. They were just like, "This is gonna be the year. It's gonna be a good year."
Right,
but then it's just been constant downhill from here. Like very bad.
I never want to generalize and just say that this year is just explicitly better because terrible things happened in 2019 and 2018 and 2017, and everybody by the end of the year says, "I can't wait for the year to be over because X and Y happened. My favorite celebrity died. My favorite show got canceled. My favorite food is gone." Whatever it is. And 2020 just seems like it's a concentrated mashup of just like, shittiest things about the past century all-stars. Everything terrible is sort of going on all at once. And it seems like it's almost a bit excessive. And obviously, 2021 isn't going to magically make it better. But I think conceptually we sort of look at this year as just sort of like, this is a mess.
We can hopefully do better next year.
Hopefully, yeah. The quantification of a new year sometimes brings about a new hope, like resolutions do at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I've been, to keep myself afloat, mentally, I've actually started seeing a therapist just to, have like a weekly outlet to discuss sort of where I'm at and what my feelings are. Because this year for mental health is a nightmare.
Oh, yes. Very, very true.
I do recommend keeping on top of it. If it's not a therapist, it's having somebody to talk to, a place to, express that, and sort of like a means to not bottle it all up, because inevitably, it won't get better that way. Still playing games occasionally, still watching movies, hanging out with my cats and my wife, and, trying to just sort of not look too far down the road and just say, well, what's this upcoming week got? Because if I start concentrating, tunnel vision too much into the future, I think it gets overwhelming, and I have to sort of dial it back and say, well, the next 7 days is where I'm at.
There you go. And especially day by day. I mean, it's a great way to think of it, is like, the next day is something new and exciting, and not as daunting as yesterday.
Right.
So, I mean, keeping that kind of outlook is always really positive.
Absolutely, yeah. One day something can be bad, the next day it could completely turn around, and you got to sort of, hope for that. Doesn't mean it'll always happen, but you got to sort of, keep yourself in tune with the possibility that one day at a time. That's a good point.
But do you think that it's actually going to start to bring change into the society? Like, for examples, interactions with, let's say, movie theaters. Movie theaters have kind of been diminishing to begin with.
Sure.
And now, with COVID, was that just the kick in the butt to get it out of here? Or is it just like people will kind of only pay extra for this experience that isn't as amazing as people think it is?
As it once used to be. I mean, now that we can get, home theaters with projectors and large screen TVs that are somewhat affordable, it's, I think, fine for a lot of people to sort of feel that movie theaters might be antiquated. And it's hard to say, because you look at where technology has continued to bring us. I mean, 20 years ago, Blockbuster was the king of the castle because you could go rent movies, and
That
so
was
you
my
had,
shit.
right, absolutely, and you had competing places like Hastings that are very regional, or you have
Hollywood movies, right? Was that
Hollywood
another?
Video,
Video,
was
yeah.
one in stores that allowed for rentals, so you could take movies home and try them out. And then once video on demand, sort of skyrocketed, the need for that disappeared entirely.
Exactly.
And so, like the times sort of dictate what it is that is next in line, but will also go by the wayside. And in another 10 years, movie theaters may be strictly a thing of the past, thought of by only like purists who want a specific experience, who might take up like a private endeavor to do so.
And willing to pay for that too.
Correct.
Because I see it now too. There was it was quite a while ago, but the release of the movie Trolls World Tour, they actually just gave it to streaming services. They're like, here, you guys buy it, and then you guys can just do whatever you guys want with it.
Sure.
But certain movie theaters were very upset with Universal because they were just like, hey, what about us?
Right.
So, like, does that entail just a certain kind of like, well, I guess it's going to have to pay more money for these kind of experiences, and just kind of like the VR is going to be something that is going to be pretty much interactive with other people, but in the comfort of your own home.
Right.
I mean, I'm a very big proponent. I love the fact that the future is about to come, and I can't wait to get a computer chip in my brain. Oh. I can't.
Yeah, whatever that ultimately means for us. I mean, technology is very exciting, and the access that we have to it now is greater than ever. But to think about, in the year 2000, technology we had at the time was greater than ever.
It was.
So in the next 10 to 15 years, it will be greater than ever, and it will be probably leaps and bounds ahead of what we currently have that we can't even conceptualize. What, becomes the norm, what becomes, bigger experiences, better experiences, integrated VR experiences to everything, holographic experiences. I have no idea. That's all sort of, Star Trek conjecture.
But
maybe
it's on the way. I mean,
right.
we see these little things that are being developed and stuff. Yeah. One of the things that I really loved was the PlayStation VR. It was a great experience, so cool. But then all of a sudden you see Elon Musk creating this Neuralinks device that is just, I think, going to blow that out of the water.
Sure.
Where you literally, I feel, can just sit in your home, close your eyes, and you're already dealing with like this interactive experience with the whole world. You want to see Egypt because you've never seen it before?
Right.
Well, guess what? You literally get to walk down the Nile River. You get to see the Sphinx and this beautiful array of colors and stuff, which nobody thought. I mean, I hate to be the person to say this, but I've unfortunately never left New Mexico.
Hey.
So there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing out on that I don't get to see. But maybe the VR will bring that to me.
Sure. Absolutely. And yeah, technology is great like that because, while right now it's still kind of expensive and it's still being developed, what do we do in, Super Mario Brothers at one point was on a chip this big and it was $50 and it held 12 kilobytes. And now we have a micro SD card that can hold a terabyte for $200.
Dope.
Just to think of like where it's going to be inevitably, because it will happen in time. It will get cheaper. It will get more accessible. And, the things that like I get to see that kids grow up with and have right now, this is going to sound very boomery, is it's exciting to see that like it is their standard. It is their norm.
Okay.
It is something that they get to have by default. They grew up in a world where this is the standard.
Like the cell phone.
Cell phones.
I don't want to push or anything, but
No.
How old are you?
I'm 39.
39?
39.
Looking good.
Thank you very
good.
Much. Thank you.
But I do know what you're saying because even when I grew up, I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until I was at least 19.
That was actually about the age that I got my cell phone. It was my first year of college.
Yeah, and there's kids that have literally grown up on social media. Their parents literally started a social media as kids and just kind of just handed it to them. We're just like, hey, this is you. This is your whole life on social media.
Sure.
How is that? How do you feel about that? Is that something that is inevitable that was going to happen? Or is it something that's kind of like, maybe we should have slowed down a little bit instead of having everyone's whole life thrown at you right away? Because I literally can see babies' profiles and I'm just like, you're like 2 years old. Why do you have a profile?
So I think like anything, as long as it's well regulated, as long as it's understood, we know what like the power of it is.
Okay.
You have to respect what does it allow you access to, but also what risks does it hold. I think the technology is great, and I think it's incredible that we can be so connected to our peers in ways that we never could growing up.
Very true.
Having to call somebody's house to ask if they were home was it.
Yeah.
You know, and so to be able to access, you know, your friends or your teachers, you know, there are huge benefits to it for education purposes. And I don't ever demonize it. I would not want to demonize it. I think it's really great. It's fascinating to see sometimes. I was at a doctor's appointment some years back, and there was a little girl in the waiting room. Her mom hands this little girl the magazine, and she grabs it and tries to make the picture bigger with her hands.
Whoa.
And I was like, this is kind of mind-blowing. This is like my senior moment, is watching this happen, and just, you know, I feel the gray hairs coming in. But it was really impressive because it shouldn't be surprising, because she probably has an iPad at home. The parents probably have one that they give to her to play with.
Yeah.
So why would that not be a standard? It's not, you know, like, oh, I used to walk 50 miles, you know, outside to school in the snow uphill. This is the world they grew up in. Why should they know different? They shouldn't. And I think it's really great that they have the opportunity to be defaulted into technology where, you know, we had to go to college to learn a different language. They can go online and download an app on their telephone
Quick.
and have access to it immediately. And that's great. I think that's fantastic.
I feel like that's going to be what is pretty much the norm after a while.
Sure.
Because, I mean, I honestly would love the aspect of, I'm pretty sure Google's developing the thing now where it's literally headphones in your ear.
Right.
Somebody talks a different language, but yet you're hearing what you want to hear, so
Sure.
you know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And that's kind of daunting, but yet still exciting at the same time, because I don't know how you feel about conspiracies, but sometimes people think that the government or these tech companies have too much control and too much power too fast. Like, for example, Facebook was kind of in a big fault for this privacy thing going on with
Sure.
like getting breached and stuff like that, or even Twitter about Russian bots and stuff,
Right.
Influencing the election.
Right, yeah. It's, excuse me, water is delicious.
Give a shout out quick, Cali Gaming TV. Thank you for watching. We're talking about random stuff, so just an FYI.
Excuse me.
He's like, we're confusing people. We're going everywhere tonight.
Yeah,
That's what
why
we're
not?
doing.
That's the whole conversation.
And Food Stamp Entertainment, thank you as well for joining. You guys are awesome. And make sure to leave a comment or anything if you guys want us to hit a topic. Just let us know.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about literally whatever. Conspiracy theories, I mean, that's tricky. I think what something we all have to sort of consider is that it's easy to pop onto Facebook and be like, oh, they have my data now. They have this and that and the other. You know, Twitter is responsible for... And 99% of people who pop into anything with a user agreement skip it so they can get to it.
Yes,
They
very
don't.
true.
You know, and so unfortunately, like, the legality is already completely diminished because they've, you know, people are too impatient to read through TOS. And that's fair because they're long and boring. No one's going to take the time to do that.
Over 60 pages.
You know, like it's
Fine print.
right. Yeah, it's stipulations everywhere, and most people simply don't care. But then, you know, try to make these... I usually see older people do this. They'll make these statuses that say, I do not give Facebook my permission to blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
blah.
yeah.
And it's like, you already clicked the button.
Yeah.
When you signed up for this thing. Like, that's null and void.
What is your little comment going to help the algorithm know that you aren't part of the system?
Right, yeah. All it's going to do is have Wish send you, like, panties that are made out of, like, bread or whatever.
There you go.
Like,
right.
that's all.
Rocks.
Yeah,
I've gotten rocks on my Wish before. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what are you trying to sell me? But
Yeah.
that's great to think about too.
Yeah.
It's just like they're kind of learning what we want for us to see as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's in a negative way though, because they do say that Facebook kind of works more with negative reactions and stuff. So that obviously comes up on your feed faster than a positive thing. Like
Sure. Okay.
Going into like the police, you see more negative aspects of the police all the time now.
Right.
And it's all because we're all starting to talk about it more. We're all starting to bring it up to light. But unfortunately, there are a handful of still good cops out there that actually kind of know the procedures, the mental illnesses, the all these different things about what's going on in the world.
Right.
But then again, the first thing that comes up on your feed is this person is getting shot, this person is getting harassed, this
Sure.
person is getting profiled, which does happen. Don't get me wrong, it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no balance anymore of what's really good and bad anymore. It's totally, let me show you all the bad so you guys can make a rash decision right away.
Right. Well, I mean, the bad in media is the stuff that gets the attention. You know, like if you read a story that, you know, like boy saves puppy from well, that's great, but it's not going to make the news. It's going to be like, oh, this is a feel good thing that people sort of pass by. But if you see, you know, like bear mauls campers, everybody wants to see the picture. Everybody's going to click on it. You know, that it gets glamorized very easily. And so that's an unfortunate like trait of humanity, is that we want to see like adversity and sadness for some reason. Maybe we want to relate to it. I'm not really sure.
That's really weird to think about too. It's like it has to be some kind of psychological, mental thing that I mean, I wish I knew more about the subject, and I could just be like, yeah, well, there's papers written on why we like to do this and stuff. Right. But I mean, I don't know, and it's hard to kind of when it gets fed to me, because I'm just like, in the conspiracy sense, great, they're just showing me all this negative news. Like, no wonder you guys have a bunch of negative aspects that happen, like the fighting, the different radical groups that are going against each other.
Right.
There are still people out there that have two different opposing sides, the left and the right, that still can meet and still shake hands and still have a good conversation. But I don't see that, and that's kind of what sucks, is because I feel like the social media and anything in general is just, that's what they're showing us.
Right. Not often enough. I fully agree. I think something really important to consider, just if you want to see change in the world, obviously the cliche saying is be the change. And that's important to me because I see a lot of folks that will post stories occasionally that say, here's wholesome content, here's a story about like a boy who raised up enough money to get his sister a wheelchair or whatever, something really uplifting.
Yeah.
And whenever people post these stories, they say, this gives me hope for humanity. This makes me believe in humans again. And I think the most important thing that we can take from that is when you see those kinds of things and you feel good about what people can do, why not try to be that person that other people can feel good about? Why not take that step for yourself to say, if this person can influence me, why can't I influence somebody else?
And that's kind of like, I don't know, I've always learned that kind of moral or value growing up. It's like, hey, if you see somebody being good, you should be good too. Like, it's more of like that easy kind of, I don't. That's a good term that they use. Tryhards.
Sure.
So if you try hard, you want to try hard as well too. You see people trying hard, you're just like, I want to kind of try hard too. I see the success and the kind of glamour and the kind of cool stuff that they get out of it.
Sure.
Why not do it too?
Right.
Is there kind of a negative aspect where it's like, no one's gonna pay attention to me? This guy gets all the glory. Why would it be me? Like,
why do good if people can't witness it or something? And that gets really dangerous. If you're doing good for the wrong reasons, how good truly is it? Because when you set an example for people, it will speak 1,000 times louder than your words can ever be. Like people can yell at each other till you're blue in the face, but if you exhibit your values, I think it's much more tangible because people can actually witness what you say. They can match that integrity.
Do you think this has kind of been something that's been daunting throughout time, though? I mean, you've seen, I don't want to be that kind of person, but I've never been a religious kid, a little boy. But is that something that they say that's why religion was made, just so it kind of can dumb down the masses, so they don't think more than what they're supposed to. They don't know more of the knowledge that's out there. You kind of hear these stories and these things from like Christianity and the Catholics, but yet there's still other historical events that happen that kind of get brushed down under the rug. Like we don't even. One of the big things that I love is that the pyramids weren't built by the Egyptians.
No,
they were actually built by older civilization, and the Egyptians kind of got squatters' rights on them.
Basically, sure.
That's how I feel. But there's so many people that would never even think of that as an actual story that is actually true. And maybe now in time, the more in the future that we get to, it is starting to come more to light. But ever since I was a kid, I saw a documentary that was like, hey, this is actually what might have happened in Egypt. But as my parents being a little bit more of a religious background and stuff, they're just like, oh, don't listen too much to that hogwash because it's not true. You got to make sure to be a nice person in your own sense. And it's kind of making me feel like, as a human, I'm kind of only told to think a certain way.
Sure.
And I don't like that, especially us being very open-minded creatures. Like, we want to learn so much about everything, especially as a kid. You see the most interactive, like, they're so curious about everything, every little thing. But yet, as we get older, it just kind of feels like, hey, don't touch that. Hey, don't go there. Hey, don't associate with these people. And it's just like, oh, okay, I guess I better not because they're telling me not to.
Right. Yeah, our curiosity is the most vital part. To be human is to be constantly exploring. And I think it's important that whether or not you think you have all the information, ask further, ask more, learn more, and exhaust any venue you have to the best of your ability. It's very easy to simply be told something and say, well, okay, I accept it because that's what I've heard. And I think that can get really dangerous because to a point, we stop wondering if something is true because we've heard that it is, without questioning whether it is or not. And I mean, this might sound, like weird philosophical kind of thing, but why not keep exploring for our own edification, for our own verification, for empirical evidence as best we can get it, so we can know for ourselves. But in turn, that allows us to help educate other people, and not just to say, "Hey, listen to me. I've done my research," but here's what research has taught me. Maybe you should do the same.
Exactly.
And I think I want to see people continue to seek knowledge instead of saying, my values are this because that's what I was told. So are those your values, or are they somebody else's values then?
Yeah.
Do you believe it because somebody else handed it to you? And if so, why not believe it for yourself? And to believe it for yourself, maybe you should research it.
True. And that's the beauty of the new age that we're in now, is you can literally discover and find anything you want online and learn it yourself.
Yes.
You don't have to go to a professor or a college and kind of oh yeah, I've seen that research before, but I don't really believe in it.
Right.
Well, that's your opinion. Maybe I should still kind of research it, or maybe find out more about it.
Sure.
So that in that sense, I just feel like us as humans are kind of growing more into this amazing creature where we will be able to travel the stars and be able to interact with anything out there.
Sure.
I mean, who knows if there's aliens or not? I don't know, but guess what? They say that they're among us right now.
Sure.
I don't know if you're a firm believer. Do you believe in reptilians? Have you heard of the reptilians? They're out there. They influence the politics, they say. I don't know. That's what they put on me, where I have to well, it might not be true, but I got to at least put it into my data bank, and you never know, because within 2035, one of the dudes is going to be we've been here this whole time.
Right.
We don't know.
Hey, keep it up there conceptually, and if you're right, you're right, and if you're wrong, okay, keep going.
Just keep going. I love that. That's a good one. That deserves that for sure. But it's true. It is very true, because there are so many things in the world right now that we used to think were not even true at all.
Sure.
The Earth was the center of the universe.
Oh, right. Yeah. Absolutely.
We ended up discovering there's more out there and more stuff. So with that knowledge, why is it not going to get more intense or more immersive at that point?
Well, sure. I mean, as they say, Socrates, the more you know, the more that you know nothing.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I think if you feel that you know too much, you've never been more wrong. There's always more out there, always, consistently.
Especially when you see really vast or big things. I used to actually live up in the mountains with my grandpa up in the Taos area.
Cool.
The night sky is just beautiful. When you look up at the night sky, you literally feel like you're nothing.
Infinitesimal. You are
because
a
it
speck.
Because it is so amazing. But unfortunately, coming to the city and seeing that kind of same aspect, we kind of get dumbed down with the light pollution and stuff, and it doesn't feel the same.
Sure.
Same thing with people that live by the ocean. They feel like maybe their life is a little more not as vast, or not as confusing, because when they look at it, they're just yeah, there's literally way too much out there that we know nothing about.
Sure.
And the beautiful thing about that is we discover new animals, new insects, new fish every day.
Yeah.
How is that not showing us maybe we're the aliens?
Right.
I mean, who knows? Again, this is one of those things where I was just I've been blown away for such a long time. It's just I'm waiting for somebody just to show me a sign.
Yeah. Well, it's great because there are signs everywhere. Think of all the things that we are the culmination of all of our experience and nothing more. So any brand new thing that we experience, suddenly we realize, I've never done that. I've never been that. I've never felt that. And that there are infinite things that we can ultimately do. Anything that you can imagine, could happen to some degree. And if we haven't experienced it, then we can only theorize what it is.
Yeah.
We can only, hear what somebody else's experience might be, but for ourselves, you don't know.
Yeah.
And so until you do it, it's all just theoretical.
That's very true. And that's true of everything. For a while now, probably it's been about 10 years now, I've actually gotten into the aspect of magic, cardistry and
cool.
hand sleight of hand and stuff like that.
Great.
But that blows people away because they literally think that it's magic, that it's actually something that they can't see, they can't comprehend it correctly.
Right.
But it's a skill that I learned that I wish I can show the world, because that's hey guys, guess what? There's more out there than just what you see, because I'm doing it in front of you and you don't even see it.
Yeah.
And that just blows me away. It's crazy.
That's great. Yeah. To have something that you can show anybody that they don't understand is thrilling in a sense, you know.
And that's cool with the fact that you're kind of doing with the gaming and stuff is like there's so many things I've barely started to discover too. Like I saw your collection of very little handheld things.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, is there really that much small miniature game things out there?
A world out there of weird collectibles. I actually have an Instagram page that I showcase like weird things from my collection. And one of the most bizarre things I found out there is a small hand crank that you plug into a Game Boy Advance SP and power it.
A crank?
A crank. I bought it in Japan for like $3, and you can sit there, and if you're tenacious enough, you could fully power a dead system to completely operational.
Just run for while you're still cranking it, or just to power it up?
Probably have to have like a really good friend to do it while you're playing. But you could do it yourself and then play it later. So if you're like on a really long trip, I mean that would be awful and boring, but you could. It exists. So somebody made it, and somebody also greenlit the idea and said, "Let's produce these things." And it's bizarre, but yeah, there's things out there that like unimaginably existent, and it's great.
I think it's more of the aspect of discipline as well too. Like, you know, those little things where you're just like, well, if you're going to take the time to see how it works,
sure,
especially a little hand crank, it's like it's actually very disciplined, and you actually get to see cool, immersive, like technology at its finest, where now we just put our phone on a pad and it charges automatically.
That's incredible too. Yeah, I never would have thought growing up that this would be something that we would have such immediate access to that would govern our lives in both, you know, great and kind of frightening ways.
I honestly feel like everyone's like, I'm so scared of having a computer chip in me. I'm so scared of somebody putting a computer chip. But yet, we've had a computer chip for almost a long time.
It's not that far removed. It's basically just the matter is it's in your pocket all the time.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's not like we're any safer.
It's there. You still have the same. It knows your location. You can find out any information with it.
Right. Yeah. I don't want the government to track me. Tweets somebody from their iPhone. Like, there's a weird irony in that. And yeah, we're a lot closer to it than we think. I think people just sort of project a certain idea as being more, you know, terrible because it's in my body. I don't know what it is, but if it's in your hand, like, you don't question it at all.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I'm not scared of it. I mean, I'm a very big proponent of the Neuralinks. I want 2 of them.
Sure. In
my head right now. I mean, if I can get those as soon as I can, just to understand what it's going to be like, I'm okay with that.
So you'd like to guinea pig it?
I would.
Hey.
And the crazy thing about that too is that it's already kind of being tested on animals and stuff.
Sure.
To the point where, like, within the next 5 years in our lifetime, man, we're gonna see that.
Almost assuredly, yeah.
And is it something that you feel you would maybe kind of think about doing, or something that you're just like, I'll actually hold off on that till the next generation comes out?
You know, I actually am not necessarily opposed myself. I don't know that I would do it. I'm not against the technology. I think you'd have to be in, you know, some pretty trusting hands.
You don't trust Elon Musk?
I don't know about that. He's very brilliant, but I think he's
the Tony Stark of our universe.
Fascinating human. Yeah. How much intelligence, money, and power does one person need? And ultimately, like, what kind of person truly is he?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I can't say.
We don't have a conversation with him.
But yeah,
he's not in the studio right now.
Yeah, he's not here. I'd be fascinated to have a talk with that man, because he is, I think, you know, leagues beyond my understanding of humans.
I honestly think he's a robot.
I would not be surprised at this point.
He was when they did do the presentation of the testing on the animals and stuff. He actually did say something where it's like, you guys would never know if I had one in me right now.
Sure.
And I was just like, holy fuck, he's got one in him.
Right. Yeah. Very very possible. In fact, extremely likely that technology exists and is still sort of being, you know, like. Think of how much technology in the government in general has been used that we're just not aware of, and they don't reveal until it's time to reveal it.
Again, one of the conspiracies is that they say that the government has always been 20 years ahead of our technology. Mm-hmm. So whatever technology we have right now, they have the same thing 20 years advanced.
Dude, they had Game Boys back in 1969. Lucky SOBs.
Yeah, right. I saw a patent for a VR in the 60s. A 60s patent for a VR. Like, how does that not show that the government has these cool things that they've been working on for years? And then they're like, okay, it's at a safe model now.
Right.
We know how to use it. Let's go ahead and give it to the general public.
They're just very forward thinking. Yeah, it's hard to say. But
it's fun. It's so fun. It's one of those things where it just always blows me away, where I guess you just never know exactly what is behind closed doors.
I think, yeah, there's sort of like this technological what's the right word? I just had it. Not atheism. What's the unknown, the uncertainty, that agnosticism,
Okay.
is that, we don't know one way or the other. So how do we try to prove it? Because if it can or cannot be proven, but to theorize and think about. And I think it's fascinating to think about the possibility of all things. I actually am very resistant to dismiss stuff too easily because there's too much out there that I don't know enough about. I mean, when I was a kid growing up learning how to play the guitar, I took lessons for a month, and then every time I would see somebody holding a guitar on TV, I'd be like, oh, he's doing that wrong, because, I had 4 weeks worth of experience. And it was like, that's ridiculous. What do I think that I know simply because I've had a brush encounter with it? There's too much knowledge out there that I am absolutely not privy to, that I certainly couldn't dismiss anything.
That's very true.
And anything I don't know anything about, I especially can't, And just because someone's told me, I certainly can't.
And that's just like one of those things, well, maybe I'll experience it, maybe I won't.
Correct.
It just takes that time to understand it and stuff.
Yeah, and I just never want to dismiss anything. I never want to be so certain of something without actually knowing.
That's true. Very true.
And that even extends to video games.
That does it?
I've been so wrong about video games and movies and TV shows and books where I've thought, oh, this looks kind of like whatever, right? It looks like it's not to my taste. And you can gauge things based off of what you think you might not like. But how do you actually ever know until you've done it? And I've played countless games and watched countless movies and TV shows that once I actually experienced it, I was like, man, I was wrong.
No.
I thought this thing was going to be terrible, and this is one of my favorite. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm going to be honest. It's a show that I didn't watch until about 5 years ago.
Okay.
A friend of mine lent me the DVDs, and I was like, Nickelodeon kids anime, huh? Okay.
Okay.
And I really don't like doing that, but I sort of was like, I'm sure this is fine, but it's probably... And then I ended up watching it and was sort of like halfway paying attention. Then a couple episodes into the second season, something caught my eye, and I was like, wait a second, this writing is really good. This character development's really good.
Interesting.
And so then I went back and started the entire show from scratch and paid strict attention to it. And the entire time I was like, wait a second, this is really well written. Kids can enjoy this, but this isn't written for kids. It's written so kids can also identify with it, and hopefully kids can, enjoy it. But it went a lot deeper to me in my values than what I expected. And so I ended up, by the time I finished the show, I was like, that was one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
I'll watch it again.
Dude, yeah, exactly. And so I've seen it a couple times now and just thought, how did I not give this a chance when it happened?
That's true.
And there's just too much stuff out there for me to think that I know enough about it without experiencing it that I'll gladly be wrong about things. If being wrong means I can experience more stuff I will let me be wrong.
That's true. That was the same thing with the Gravity Falls series on Disney XD.
I've heard nothing but good about it.
Yeah, Disney XD. Why would I watch something on Disney XD? I'm already going to be in my 30s.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, it's actually a very great show. Well written. Same thing, like dealing with parallel universes, dealing with so many different aspects where you're just like, whoa, this is made for kids, but anybody can enjoy it.
Sure. It's kind of nice to be humbled by our lack of experience with things, and to just say, look, I don't want to dislike things, and this is what it comes down to video games. Is I don't want to dislike a single game. There are games that don't speak to my taste. There are practices by companies I'm not into.
Like, give us some examples.
The way that microtransactions are handled is usually the big one that's easy to cite.
Okay.
I don't even think they're inherently evil. I just think some companies do it poorly.
Oh, okay. Fortnite.
And, loot crates and stuff like that, I think, get a little dicey.
What do you mean? I spent $50.
Right, yeah. I'm not so into the gambling aspect of it, but if you wanted to buy a horse armor, the first Notorious DLC for Oblivion, shoot, caveat emptor. It's your decision, and if you want your horse to have armor, you get to choose that. And if you want it, heck, it's your $250 or whatever it is. Why not? I think the option for it to be there is kind of cool, but I don't think the mandatory nature of it really sits well with most people. It has to be presented well.
There you go.
But anyway, I think, there's just so much great stuff out there that we have the opportunity to miss. And I don't want to miss it. I know I'll never experience it all, but I certainly don't want to throw it by the wayside without knowing for myself.
That's very true. One of the things I guess you can say that people are kind of starting to get a light into, that are starting to discover these, are psilocybin and these immersive things with our brain, where we really don't know anything about our brain to a sense, but yet we have ancient shaman and ancient people going through these ritualistic ceremonies hundreds of years, like it's been passed down for generations from generations to open your mind to this new kind of world, this new kind of indulgement. But yet we still get like this whole, oh, drugs are bad. Let me tell you, kids,
Sure,
drugs are bad. But then again, you end up finding out like, hey, maybe somebody with PTSD ends up getting a little bit more level-headed because they maybe took some magic mushrooms.
Sure.
Or they ended up finding out a little bit more about themselves that was negative, and now they've changed. They've been using it a lot for like addictions and stuff too. People that have a smoking addiction or addicted to alcohol and stuff like that. Hey, you need to pop 5 mushrooms in and you're good to go.
Sure.
And we see it in a sense too, where it's like, oh man, what do we really know about our minds?
Right. Yeah. And I think as long as we're experimenting responsibly, I think that's sort of like the biggest key to, any sort of like whatever path we all choose to go down, whatever it is responsibility. How much does it affect us? How much does it affect those around us? Is it something that will make me better so that I can be better for other people? Or is it something that makes me better at the expense of other people? And those kinds of things, I think, really we weigh out when it comes to exploring our universe and our minds and psychedelics or other things. Just what is the effect to those around you as well?
Yeah, because there's even certain ways that people have used like breathing techniques just to get that state of mind where people are like, well, how did you do that? Like, well, I took mushrooms. Oh, well, I only had a breathing technique exercise, but yet we're explaining the same thing.
Sure.
So there's more to the aspects of our body and mind that yet I guess different doors or different things can open up those avenues.
Sure.
And maybe technology with video games and stuff like the VR and stuff like that, we'll be able to see way more than we've ever thought was possible.
Yeah, and I mean, something that I think about all the time, this is something that I've thought of as a kid, is we are limited to, again, our experience. So what if there's experiences out there that we simply can't conceptualize because we just haven't thought of it yet? And one of the things as a kid I would think about, 'cause I wasn't that deep as a child, ever, no way.
You're like, I wasn't sitting there philosophically thinking about all these things.
Nothing like that, but I remember seeing a rainbow and thinking, oh, there's only 7 colors. What about 8, 9, 10? Are there more colors than that? And thinking, like, what if there are colors we just haven't seen yet? And this is obviously not a new subject. I didn't breach this idea. But we can't conceptualize it because we're limited to what we've seen.
Exactly.
And so if there's something out there that is off the spectrum of what we can even conceive, obviously we can't even identify it because it hasn't been, like, brought into existence for us to think about. So, like, why not that concept with infinite other things?
And I think we just don't have the mental capacity to actually think of those things.
You're probably right.
Like right now, in front of our faces, there's hundreds of millions of particles flying right in front of us.
Sure.
Literally going on where reactions are happening.
Yeah.
There's actually hundreds of particles going out there, but we can't see them.
Right.
We can't really understand them in a way where it's just like, I know how an atom and a proton work together. I know how it actually interacts with the air.
Yeah.
And yet it happens in front of us. In like a microscopic level, that's just crazy. That's the discovery of quantum theory and stuff like that.
Sure.
It's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, it's so much. I was going to say bigger, but it's literally everything around us is made of the same thing: atoms and quarks and gluons. So why is it different? Why does it look different? Why does it interact different or appear different or function different?
Yeah.
Like it's all kind of the same thing on a level that we simply can't comprehend with our eyes.
Exactly.
That's kind of fun. That's kind of exciting.
It blows me away. Like literally, there's nothing different than what the beginning structure of my body is and this can is. But yet it's just arranged a certain way so it looks like this
Sure.
and I look like this.
Sure.
It's fucking mind-blowing, man.
Right.
But then again, these topics get brought up and it's just dismissed or made seem like, oh, that's hogwash. Nobody's really doing anything in those sense. Where is that going to help the society? How does that help the poverty-stricken children? How does that help, the person that's getting beat? How does there's all these questions that come up that actually start to lose value in what these ideas are.
Right.
For people like basic humans like me. Like I totally like would love to understand more of this, but then I try to talk to it or about it to people, but yet it gets dumbed down to a sense where like, maybe you don't know what you're talking about.
Sure. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot out there, and I think everybody has a lane. Everybody's got like a focus and like an understanding and like sort of an innate draw to specific things. Like I love music, but I'm not that great at it. I do an okay job.
So you play guitar?
Poorly, but sure. Yeah, you know, like
he's gonna rock out here in a bit, guys. I got a few guitars back there. He's gonna rock out.
Not well, but you know, drawing and painting might be more my thing, or you know, doing graphic design. Like it comes much more easily to me than you know something that I might want to do more, such as play the guitar well or speak a different language well. And but everybody's got like a different lane, and when people can focus on that. You know, it's not to say that it's not important that we don't look for ways to feed the starving and help the needy, but there are also people whose focus is to say, but we need to advance technology on this front and our understanding of the world on this front because this is our lane. This is where we contribute to society. Because maybe while this guy can do it, he can't do it as well as somebody whose focus that is. And we all have different paths to go down. And while I think we should ultimately all try to help each other and be there for like sort of the greater whole, sometimes I think it's also good to say, you know, these guys are taking care of the job, so I can focus on this to try to advance my understanding of such and such so that this can ultimately become better. You know, we do have people that are experimenting with strange things in labs and not just looking how to create infinite food to feed the world. But that technology is also important in its own right, in its own way, in its own advancement. You know, so I don't ever want to be too quick to dismiss because if we want to get down to it, what we're doing right now is not feeding the homeless. What people watching are not doing is feeding the homeless. We're all guilty of this if we want to like get down to it, and we can't let ourselves get so inundated with those thoughts that like we stop everything. But I think it's important to be aware of it, to look for ways where we can contribute when we're able to, but also to remember that we all still have a lane. We also have a path. We also have a calling that we adhere to, and hopefully those callings make the world a better place so that the bad can be diminished ultimately.
Yeah, and you kind of see it when lanes start to cross within each other and stuff too. Like, for example, the painting. Like when you really start painting and stuff, and somebody ends up coming in an aspect with music, they can probably see it in a way where they never thought. Whether it's like, oh, instead of just thinking of all the notes as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, flat. You see them as colors.
Sure.
And then these colors mix together, and then it ends up turning into a whole avenue of something beautiful where it's just like, wow, I made a whole song based off of a color pattern.
Sure.
And that happens so many times where it's just like, well, maybe I should have opened my mind a little bit more to this aspect sooner or later.
Sure.
But it kind of brings it little nuance, like little steps into getting it out there. Mm-hmm. And who knows, like literally that's the beauty of us as humans is like we're discovering new things every day.
Every day.
And that blows me away. Like they just throw a net at the bottom of the Amazon and then all of a sudden they light a fire. All these bugs die. But then they find new and exciting bugs that they never thought that they ever seen before.
Sure.
And that in itself, what if one of those bugs is the cure for like some very sick-ridden disease that is out in the world right now?
Yeah. And while I'm a very firm believer in science, I also think that we have to remember that science is limited again to our current understanding of it. Because the science that we understand now is different than the best science that we had 100 years ago.
Very true.
You know, and so I think it's great to say that like it might be like very finely tuned, and I never want to dismiss, like those kinds of like factual evidence that we have to this point. But like you never know if one thing comes along on a subatomic level and changes our understanding of everything. I don't know, maybe not, but at the same time, you can't say it can't happen.
And you see that all the time with like different plant mixtures and stuff where they actually have like, if you actually do mix these two plants together, you actually get some kind of new chemical reaction that happens in the body. But we've never actually done that before until recent years or recent discoveries where somebody was just like, hey, maybe I should try this out.
Sure.
I recently found out that the broccoli sprouts actually have this like weird chemicals inside of them that when you actually start to chew them, they actually combine together, and it's actually a little bit more harmful for the human body.
Interesting.
And that blew me away. I was like, what? I thought broccoli was good for you.
Right, yeah, so where do I get my potassium?
But yet again, it kind of makes sense because as humans and animals, they can actually run away from predators. They can actually get away from what is endangering them.
Broccoli can?
It can't. No, like animals and us animals.
I was just making sure.
Animals and humans can do that, but broccoli stays in the same form.
True.
But yet it has to come up with a chemical formula inside to be like, well, we're dying off right now. Maybe we can actually start taking samples from the soil, start throwing nutrients inside of the stem, and now all of a sudden it starts becoming something different.
Right.
And that comes up to my next topic is like, what is the difference really between people that are vegan and that people that eat meat? Like, people turn it into this two-sided coin again, where it's just like, oh, people that eat meat are super bad. They should not do that because it's ruining society. It's ruining the nature. But yet plants has always have a defense mechanism to ward off predators and stuff like that, where they have to kind of develop their own toxins, neuroplasticities, where literally that's how they defend themselves.
Sure.
And how is that not understanding more of the world than what we get out of it?
That's a tricky question.
It blows me away. Like, I'm not saying, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're pretty centered on that. You're not like a vegan, or you're not
I'm not terribly extreme in a lot of things other than like human rights, like people's like ability to like,
You're not trying to like, make sure you're condemning people or anything.
No, that's the last thing I want to do. Is nobody's choices are mine to make, I think everybody needs to adhere to their own value systems.
But in a sense, I'm pretty sure you get the benefit of both sides, where you're just like, yeah, I do get the sense where, vegetables do help. They do have a certain kind of, vitamins and minerals and certain kind of things that do help the human body, as well as meat.
Yeah.
As well as a nice piece of juicy red steak meat.
Hey.
I mean, it's crazy to think about, too, because, again, this is probably a touchy subject because people are always in the sense of like, well, you're not really understanding animals in that sense. But then am I understanding plants in the sense, or are you understanding plants? Because I ended up finding out these weird things about plants just recently, where it's just like, oh, well, I didn't know plants actually can't run away from humans, so they end up making their own kind of defense mechanism for themselves.
Sure.
And you see that all the time with cactuses, and you see that with other kind of different poison ivy, stuff like that. Like, what is the difference between that plant that's right next to another plant, but yet you kind of have to be careful with those plants? Or same thing with the mushrooms. Like, you can't go into a field and just nilly just eat all of these things, because some of them do have pretty horrible side effects that couldn't actually probably be devastating.
Sure.
Same thing with animals too. Like some animals do develop like these poisons and toxins inside of their bodies so that they don't get eaten by certain other animals. How is that not translated into plants as well? People don't see it that way.
It's an interesting parallel, yeah. And I certainly don't want to speak for anybody, and I truly, never like stepping on toes with this
I love meat.
But there's a lot to it that from multiple perspectives. I never want to say that when it gets too black and white, I think that we sort of lose sight of what the whole point is. And the value system is a gradient. The value system is, I understand why people wouldn't want to eat meat from a moral standpoint. I understand why people would want to from a nutritional standpoint. Both sides have a lot of validity, and it's hard when, again, people sort of demonize the other for not adhering to their own values.
Right.
Our goals are not the same. What we want is not the same. What people, strive for and seek and try to do, and maybe there's people call me a fence sitter for this, and fine, whatever. But I think it's so important to sort of let people be their own, educate each other to the best of their ability without being able to berate somebody, and let others choose based on that information.
Very true.
Because
I mean, again, especially with the humans, we have totally different, like the way our gut biome works, the way we intake different kinds of foods and stuff. Like, of course, maybe you can't eat meat all the time. That's just in the sense of, I'm not using you as an example, but that's you get what I'm saying, is like there are people out there that do have problems processing red meat or processing certain kinds of meat that's why they stick with the vegan diet and stuff like that.
Right.
But that's learning about yourself, learning about what you can intake and what you can and can't do, compared to the other person where it's just like, look at how big and strong I am because that's all I do is do this.
Right.
But that's not for everybody.
Right.
Nobody has the same kind of aspect, or just like the way that they work. Nobody has the same kind of...
Sure. The biological makeup could be different. And
It's
somebody
very different.
who has an iron deficiency might need more meat, and that's simply all there is to it. So do you say, well, I'm going to condemn you to this lifestyle because this is what I believe, and then you become, kind of infringent upon other people's, inconsistencies, the variables.
It's weird. It's so crazy. Let's jump topics a little bit. We're getting a little bit too heated with the meat process. Okay, here's the $1 million question.
Okay.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Depends what you're asking me to do.
Graphic wise, for the best experience on a 4K TV.
So here's what's great.
Dun dun dun.
Here's what's great. If you want to get my fully objective opinion about this kind of thing,
Visit his YouTube channel.
Unless you have them side by side, you are almost assuredly not going to actually notice a difference.
Really?
And this is what's great, because like if you compare things side by side, in most cases you can look and you can nitpick, and a lot of it I think is sort of placebo.
Whoa.
And not to say that things
No,
aren't
I like that.
objectively better, because the Xbox I think has better specs on a technical level. But what does that mean if the game that's being made isn't
up to par with those specs?
Like, I mean, they're going to be nearly identical across both systems, because you don't have a developer who's going to sit there and say, oh, we've got more power over here, we'll just juice it up more. Probably not. You're going to get a nearly identical experience. Conversely, any exclusive you have on the PS versus an Xbox system will already even look better because they're optimizing it for those specs in particular.
Okay.
And this is why Nintendo's actually gotten away with being able to have lower powered systems, because they understand their own architecture and hardware, and they can do things that speak to it on its own level, and they don't have to worry about it being multi-platform. It works on the system it was designed for, and so it looks great in its own right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a strength that they have, and so...
Notice that's why I didn't I didn't put Nintendo in that category.
They're their own beast, man.
Yeah, they do their own things that kind of like take niche from both of them. They're like, well, you don't have to be this amazing game console to have a great experience.
Totally
and not
agree.
only that, they've made it in a way where I'm a really big fan of the Nintendo Switch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's no handheld PlayStation stuff recently out right now.
No.
What am I going to do? Play a Vita that's like 10 years old? Like there's nothing compared to that. It's probably 20 years old, but
right, yeah. And this is my thing, is like, I can sit there and play Doom 2016 on my Switch in bed. And somebody could be like, oh yeah, what looks better on the other? Okay.
that's good.
Right on. I'm not playing that in bed. I'm playing this in bed. And guess what? It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And so the two factors that I'm always going to say are going to be like deciding factors for most people. Incidentally, and I'm going to plug the store just for a quick second, we're getting an Xbox Series X as well as a PS5 next month when they launch. And if anybody's sort of on the fence about like what they want from the experience, come to the store and we'll have them available for people to play and judge for themselves.
Okay.
Hold the controller, try out the menu, play whatever we have available, and see for yourself, determine for yourself. But the two factors, as far as I'm concerned, are which controller do you like better, and if you're going to be playing online with friends, which system do your friends have? Because the gaming experience is ultimately going to come down for most people to that. Fully unique games, exclusive games are a draw, but for a lot of people, I would wager that largely a huge number of sales are going to come from people who want to play Call of Duty with their friends.
But again, we're getting into an age where stuff is starting to become cross-platform.
And that's also, so eventually that almost becomes moot, because you can say, well, I'm on the Xbox, I'm on the PC, I'm on the PlayStation 4. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We
they're
can
all
still
playing
experience
together.
together.
Yep.
And that is a future that I want, because it becomes unified rather than you're dumb because you like Xbox, you're dumb because... And like that argument doesn't even make sense to me. It's a video game. It's a system. It's something that somebody can enjoy. What, at that point, like, what balls are you flexing that matters where somebody else is enjoying themselves?
Very true.
That's a weird one to me. And when I was little, sure, I got it, but I was also 9 years old. Like, oh, my Super Nintendo is so much cooler than your Genesis. Why? You don't have Sonic. Oh.
But then you end up discovering little things about that too, where you're just like, one of the cool things that I remember was that the Genesis was actually more brutal. You actually had the in-game titles that actually showed blood. They actually showed these cool niches. But then again, you had titles on the Nintendo that were never going to come out on the Genesis.
And it's really playing to both strengths, yeah. And eventually Nintendo sort of like evened out and started like doing blood once the rating system came into effect. But nonetheless, like... And I'll just give you the example. Toe Jam and Earl on the Sega Genesis is a game that, as far as I'm concerned...
What was it called again? Toe Jam?
Toe Jam and Earl. One of my favorite games of all time. You could play it on the Super Nintendo, but it would be a different experience. And the reason is the controller, the limited color palette, and the sound chip. And that existing on the Sega Genesis is what makes that experience what it is. And if you did put that on the Super Nintendo, it would feel different with a different controller. It would sound different because of the sound chip. And the graphics could be technically better, but they don't need to be. But they'd probably try to push that anyway, with just a stronger color palette. And so when I see certain things on certain systems, I feel like if it plays to a system's strength, I don't really want it anyplace else, because I want this experience to be what it is. Like the Genesis had a very specific sound, and I will actually probably cite this as what makes that era distinct for me, is this game's music versus this game's music.
Okay.
Like, because it sounds twangy and bassy and really thick and like molassesy on the Genesis. And the Super Nintendo has like this, maybe it was more like steel drums and trumpets and stuff. And so if you have a game that's on both platforms, it's gonna look different and sound different. And so games that play to each system's strength it sort of entice me more because they're sort of capitalizing on this can only be experienced this way here. And I like that. Mario on the Genesis, yeah, of course you could technically do that.
Now especially.
But it would just not feel the same. It would be a different experience.
I get you.
It'd be similar, but just not the same.
Isn't that the beauty of living in a capitalistic society, though? I mean, we have to have a competition base to see which one's going to do better.
Right, it has to be competitive. It can't just be the umbrella of I like video games.
Even with processors and computers and stuff like that, I'm just like, whoa! I love that there's two companies going at it to try to build the best thing.
Sure.
But don't they end up coming up with the same thing after the other one? So like maybe the greatest example is like AMD ends up coming out with graphics cards, but yet NVIDIA is king still. But yet they get these ideas where they're just like, oh, NVIDIA did this thing. What if we do this with this?
Right.
And then that ends up becoming the new norm or the new kind of thing that everybody starts to go to.
Sure.
It's that whole picking your lane but still crossing with each other to find out what you like.
Try it out. Nothing wrong with sampling it. So you remember the Atari dig about 7 years ago? I don't know, Alamogordo. Las Cruces, the White Sands. It was right around the area. I think it was in Alamogordo. Well, they dug up the copies of E.T. that were fabled to have been buried out there back in the 80s, right? And it wasn't actually like, a rumor. It was confirmed this totally happened. In fact, a lot of like video game development alumni, such as Howard Scott Warshaw and Jerry Jessup and like a bunch of people were out there just being part of this dig. And I was talking to one of the guys and a couple things came up, which is really cool. As I was talking to Howard Scott Warshaw, we set up some Ataris out there with some bowls of Reese's Pieces so people could come play E.T., experience the game, and sort of see what is the hubbub, why this game got buried and is talked about.
It's horrible.
It's yeah. But so when I talked to him, I said, "So what is it like having a game that is universally sort of disliked by most people?" And he just looked at me and he said, "People are still talking about it, aren't they?" And I was like, "Man, that's a great answer." But then I talked to another guy the day of the dig, and we're hanging out, and it's hot and sweaty and stinky because it's a literal dump, and they're just digging down to try to find these copies of these games. And I was talking to one of the guys who I believe now works at PlayStation, and he said, "It's funny to me that there's even a rumor about this because we just watched these things get buried 30-something years ago. Like this isn't like unconfirmed. We all saw it happen. It's not a big deal." And so as we were talking about, consoles, and he mentioned that he works for Sony, we're just talking about, console wars and stuff like that. And he just goes, "Man, that's just a load of bullshit. We're all friends. We're all based out of, like the Washington area, and like our offices are moments away from each other. Like behind the scenes, like it's all just like it's a drama. It's a media farce. Like, gamers have decided that there's a war and there's not one. Like you guys have just gotten yourselves so riled up. And we're all just friends. All these companies are friends. We make games together. Like what war is there? None.
That's crazy to think about too, because I love the episode of South Park where they actually had the console wars.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember that episode or if you're a big South Park fan, but they actually did an episode where they actually had Bill Gates and the Sony guys going at it for each other, trying to get the rights, or not get the rights, but getting the kids to go with their system.
Sure.
And is that kind of a thing that we put in our heads, that they're like having this competition with each other where they're ready to go fist to fist just to make sure that their console gets bought?
Yeah, and it all comes down to personal validation. People want to think that they've chosen the right thing. If you're only able to pick one, you want to pick the one that's right, whatever that means. And so like there's no clear winner other than the people who enjoy what they picked. And so then it becomes like this sort of war that's been fabricated by us to feel like we've done something better than somebody else because we like what we've bought.
Okay.
I don't think there's a war. I think it's something that, people sort of assign themselves to justify a purchase. And you don't need to justify it. You like what you like. Buy what you want. Play what you enjoy. Like, the war is in your head.
That's a good. I like that mentality because I mean, even to this day, I'm just like, I'm pretty sure the Sony executives like Xbox, and then the Xbox people are like, damn, Sony doing it again.
Yeah.
But yet that's in my head.
That's all in your head. Like they market it as such because it's fun. That's all it is. That's what it comes down to. And it is fun. Like you get to choose, and like sometimes they take little jabs at each other. But that's all. you're watching a sitcom. You're watching a movie.
There you go.
Somebody else has already decided what they're saying on social media.
It's a great marketing tactic too, I think.
It is.
That's probably how they get the most sales.
It's effective. It certainly is.
Again, then going back to that thing is like when you see these negative things about two companies going at each other, you're just like, oh, I should pick one because they're both going at it. Which one's better at the fight?
Yeah.
But yet it's just a way to get more sales.
Right.
It's just a way to be like, well, hey, Sony, do you guys want to do this video where we actually blow up your Sony PlayStation?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, why not? Because it's probably going to piss off Sony players, but yet it's still going to make Xbox or Microsoft players totally cool with it.
Sure.
Vice versa, same way too. I mean,
yeah, completely. I mean, you're not watching these guys fight a UFC battle. You're watching them fight a WWE battle.
There you go. I like that. That's a good one. I do like that.
It is.
What was the proper term for that? Where it's just like improv. Fuck, I can't remember. I used to be a big WWE fan.
Oh, sure.
I was totally in the whole like, the people's elbow.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah,
but it's all predetermined. They all knew. They knew who was going to win. They just wanted to rile up the crowd.
You're riling up the crowd. You're just getting people excited. When people like go out of their way to proclaim, oh, wrestling's fake, it's like, well, I mean, they're still doing the thing, but like,
I'd like to see you do a backflip.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it doesn't have a script, but yeah, like they're still in the ring, like attacking each other. It's just it's part of a live drama.
Yeah, it's very physical too. It's just like, well, obviously it is staged, but the stage of it is just like going to a play or going to like some kind of a ballet recital.
You don't watch a Jackie Chan movie and go, oh, this is just like predetermined. It's like, yeah, we know.
Yeah,
that's a movie. That doesn't mean it's not awesome to watch Jackie Chan jump between buildings. Like,
very true.
It's you just enjoy it. Don't pull it apart all the time. Sometimes you can just enjoy things.
Well, with that being said, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Star Wars franchise.
Sure.
How do you... Oh, my God, not right now.
Oh, no.
How do you feel about the way that it's kind of still gone on? You obviously are an older person. And
sure. Yes, I am.
You're not that much older than I am.
No.
Just a couple years. But the thing that blows me away is that they've still found a way to market it and make some more money off of it.
Sure.
And in that sense, is it a way to kind of bring more enjoyment to people, or is it just like, goddamn, we're losing money, guys, or our monies we're out of money. Like, we need to start making new Star Wars things to kind of add to the canon. Because the thing that blows me away is that George Lucas had this whole idea of episode 1 all the way to episode 7 already predetermined.
Sure.
But yet we ended up seeing episode 3 first, and it goes into this weird cycle. Like, that blows me away. Like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, Star Wars is an interesting one, and what I think when it comes to like long-term media like this is, I think it's great. I think it's great, and I think one of the most important aspects of consuming media is also to realize that not all media is created for you. Not everything made is for you. You might be able to enjoy it, and you might not. And if you don't, then it's not for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could say, I only like episodes 4 through 6, and be done with it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
1 through 3 are not for you. 7 through 9 are not for you. But the 4 through 6 that you got, somebody else got that same feeling with 1 through 3.
Oh, okay.
And somebody else got that same feeling with 7 through 9. Whereas you might have like C-3PO and the Ewoks, like, and that's what made you giggle as a kid. Jar Jar did that to somebody else. Like BB-8 did that to somebody else. I can't remember the new characters' names from like 7, 8, or 9. Like, but some of like the fun puppety kind of characters,
like Finn or Poe, like, right? Those are your heroes.
Those get to be your heroes.
Yeah,
and that's fine. That's great, because if Luke was your hero, Finn can be somebody else's. Poe can be somebody else's, and that's what I think the most important takeaway is the generation after you is not exempt from being able to enjoy these things. And so while you might not like where the story was taken, that's okay. Like, it's kind of a bummer if you didn't get enjoyment from the whole franchise. Okay. But somebody might. And if somebody else does, why rain on that? Why shit all over somebody else's enjoyment of something? I almost think that there's something wrong if you hate things that make people happy. You don't have to like it. No one has to like everything. In fact, no one does like everything. That's insane.
Yeah, it's very weird.
I'm very cool with like trying to like as much as possible, because I want to encourage other people to like it, even if it's not to my taste.
Yeah.
And in fact, this is something that we do with my store, is I will never tell a customer that a game is bad, because whose judgment is that? I can say it wasn't for me. I can say I didn't like it. I can say it didn't resonate. But like, even the worst game that I feel I've ever played in my life, if that's somebody's favorite, that's all that matters.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
That's super important to me. And it's actually, there's a story that I have, if you don't mind me
Go ahead.
telling real quick.
Tell us.
This is actually, it was probably the most humbling moment I've had when it comes to like the tastes of everybody out there. And so I was working, this is probably a year into owning Gamers Anonymous. I bought it in 2007, so this is probably sometime mid-2008. I was working one day, and we had like a case of Super Nintendo games, a whole bunch of boxed ones at the bottom, and then a bunch of loose ones on some glass shelves at the top. And this guy walks in, and he walks up to the case, and he's just sort of looking around. He goes, "Oh, please tell me you have it. Please tell me you have it." And he looks down, and he's thumbing through with his finger, and he goes, "Ah, there it is." And in my mind, I was like, okay, is it Zombies Ate My Neighbors? Is it Castlevania? Is it Link to the Past? Like, what could this guy be excited about? And so I open up the case so I could grab the game for him, and he goes, second from the left, like third from the bottom. And so I went and found it, grabbed it, and it was Super Black Bass on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, God.
And in my mind, I was kind of like, okay, well, I mean, right on. And so I put it on the counter, and he grabbed the box, and he looked at it, and he was beaming. He was just smiling. He was like...
super ecstatic.
I've been looking for this. And I said, right on. Like, I don't think I ever played this. And he goes, man, I used to play this game with my dad every single weekend before he passed. And at that moment, that was the most valuable game in my store.
Dope.
And I thought, you know what? It doesn't matter if a game is or isn't for me. If it is for somebody, it has value.
There you go.
That moment, sort of knocked me on my ass, and I was just like, no matter what is in here, no matter what game is on the shelf, I don't care if everybody in the world hates it but one person. If that one person likes this game, that game has value.
And it's there for a reason.
Completely. Everybody's got an experience that they, wish to recall and hold on to and come back to. And for this guy, it was Super Black Bass. It was more valuable than gold, the memories and the experiences this kid had. I didn't have those, but he did, and that was the bottom line. My opinion would be irrelevant.
And it just makes you feel like, in your sense, was there kind of games that you feel resonated like that to you, in a sense? Like
yeah.
what are some examples of games that you feel like everybody bashes on, but yet you still had a great experience with them? So
some of them might be newer games, but there's a game that came out 11 years ago, Bionic Commando 2009. If it's a game you're playing for story, you're probably not going to be super pleased. It's not a great story.
Okay.
It might be a great story to somebody. That's, keep that in mind. But for me, it reminded me of playing games when I was a kid because as far as gameplay goes, story, whatever. Music, great. Control, fantastic. Level design, outstanding. So I loved playing it. And playing the game made me feel like I was a kid again because I was simply playing to play and nothing more. When I played Mega Man as a kid, didn't play for the story. When I played Metroid, there's kind of a story, but barely.
Yeah.
When I'm playing Mario Kart, I'm not excited about what's the final boss script going to be like. No, I'm playing a game to play a game.
Why is Rainbow Road created?
Right, exactly. Yeah, the existential questions of the Mario universe is who is God that decided that this course could exist. It was, and it harkened back to me simply playing a game without having to worry about narrative. Not that I don't love a good story, but it was kind of nice just to sit there and be like, well, the story is irrelevant because it's not clicking with me, but I still want to keep playing. I craved playing that game every single day, and it made me feel like I was a kid.
Dope. And that's a great experience to have.
It was great, yeah. And I've had experiences with friends that I wouldn't trade when I was little, playing rock and roll racing on the Super Nintendo with my best friend, and we'd play it every weekend. We'd rent it, and if it was gone, then we'd rent something else. Zombies Ate My Neighbors, we'd rent something else if that was gone. And so I have these certain games that we just got a chance to experience together. Sonic 2, I've got a whole summer worth of that game with my best friend growing up.
Nice.
And I think most people like Sonic 2, but also it doesn't really matter if they do because I loved it.
Yeah, it was your experience that really has that value to you.
Sure.
I kind of like that aspect too. One of the gaming franchises that I've always loved was the StarCraft franchise.
Oh, dude.
StarCraft was the shit.
Yes.
But the very first introduction to me for StarCraft was StarCraft 64.
You know what?
And that was horrible. It was so bad. But yet, I remember playing it all the time with my friend. Just being like, hey, come check out this game. It's so weird. You get to control all these units with, all send them a certain way and stuff. And growing into that is just is that experience again. You don't have to like the graphics. You don't have to like the whole aspect of the control sequence. But that build up to what I love now. Because, StarCraft 2.
Oh, dude.
Best game ever.
It's incredible, right?
RTS is my shit. But I don't know if you heard the recent news that they actually are not going to do any in-game content anymore for StarCraft 2.
Oh, they're done with that?
Yes.
Okay.
It made me so sad.
That's
there's war chests and in-game purchases that you can do.
Sure.
No more. The only thing they'll keep doing is patching it and fixing like little bugs and stuff, or maybe like balancing out different aspects of it.
Well, didn't they just patch StarCraft 1 like a year ago?
I think so.
The game had been out for 2 decades, and they still patched it.
Well, see, that's the beauty of the love of the game.
Sure.
Because in South Korea, that game is still top tier to those people.
Oh yeah.
Not just StarCraft 2, StarCraft Brood Wars.
StarCraft Brood War.
That is just, there's still $1,000 tournaments that go on for these games.
That's
and that
incredible.
That blows me away so much, because they kept the game alive for this long. That's still, we need to work on the patch notes for it, or we need to work on because here in America they probably don't like it no more, but yet in another country where there's hundreds of people that still, thousands that still play that game, they want to accommodate to those fans of that game. And I love that shit.
So you know what I love is that your introduction to StarCraft was not necessarily the best playable version, but it got you into StarCraft.
Yes.
Therefore, it served its purpose. You know, we've had people who come in and say, why would people play Guitar Hero? Because, they should just pick up a real guitar. Sure. But what if Guitar Hero is what gets them into the real guitar?
That's very true.
Like I think having an entry point for a lot of people, because playing a real guitar is very intimidating compared to playing a 5-fret 1-string guitar.
Color pattern that's going on.
Sure. And so, maybe like the drums in Rock Band might be more akin to like an actual kit. The guitar is a great entry point for somebody who's also way too nervous to say, I'm going to go buy a $500 guitar.
Yeah.
But what gets people into something, I think, almost has more value than, them needing to get into the best version of something.
That's true.
What is something that will make a fan? That's the important part. And can you make a game that is accessible? If it gets somebody into the game, then yeah. Accessibility is a huge important thing. Not everybody has the coordination. Not everybody has the, some people have color blindness. Some people simply don't have the means or skill or coordination to get into certain games. And while you can't change every game for that, you can make it as accessible as possible and garner interest on more levels than just, only the elite are allowed to play this.
Exactly.
Because those elite games will still exist. But if you can have even one option that allows somebody the chance to experience it as well, no one's harmed. It doesn't take away from it.
Very true. And there's always room for improvement.
Always.
Especially if you're into it. You're just like, I like the concept of this idea. Obviously, Guitar Hero. Then they ended up being Guitar Hero, but hey, let's put the bottom frets too. So it makes it seem like you're soloing.
Right.
Or let's actually put more immersive songs, so it's actually a lot harder for people too.
Yeah.
I mean, you have no idea how much people tell me, hey, can you play that song off of Guitar Hero? And I'm just like, I don't know. There's so many songs on there. Like, what were you talking about stuff?
Sure.
One of the biggest introductions that blows everybody away is Through the Fire and Flames.
Oh, of course.
That more people know it on Guitar Hero than they do an actual guitar.
Sure.
And that's an amazing avenue where it's just like, again, the crossing lanes thing, where it's just like, maybe you'll never be able to be into music, but guess what? You can play the most hardest song on Guitar Hero and still feel like a rock star.
That's the whole point of it, man. And I think it's great.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
Yeah.
With that being said, what are like movies and stuff that you kind of are expecting to come out here in the near future? I mean, one thing that blows me away that I can't wait for, that kind of has a hiatus now, is the Marvel Universe.
Oh yeah, that's kind of on hold for the time being. I mean, there's the rumors of I want to say Sony shot them down, but I also never know like if it's just like a PR response with the Spider-Man 3 having Doctor Strange in it. And the possibility of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire returning for like a live-action Spider-Verse. Who knows if it's true or not? I don't know. But I'd love it.
Yeah.
I would absolutely eat that up, Into the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite movies in Marvel history.
Nice.
But I love Marvel movies. I love just suspension of disbelief and saying, is it accurate to the comics? It's an adaptation.
Yeah.
But it's an adaptation that I can consume more easily, therefore I'm into it.
Yeah.
It might be sort of like an abridged version of the Marvel Universe, but that's cool. I don't have time to actually read hundreds of comics. So this is a couple hours of consumable media that is just superheroes and CG effects, and I love it. I love it.
And don't you love how now with technology and the way YouTube has advanced, somebody reads it for you. Somebody kind of breaks down the whole thing for you. So
yes,
they even compare the two. They're just like, hey, this is what happened in the comic books. This is what happened in the movies. Pretty similar, but not really. This is similar. This isn't similar.
Yeah.
And now it's opened a whole new avenue for like these one of my favorite YouTube channels that I like to watch a lot is Death Battles.
Oh, yes.
Where they actually take different comic books or different heroes, different of anything, video games, and they put them together in this immersed universe where they might come together at some point.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah, you put, I'm trying to think, they probably did like Cloud versus somebody else with a big sword. I'm trying to think offhand.
They've done some pretty crazy things. One of the things that always pops out the most was Goku versus Superman.
Oh, sure.
That blew me away because you get to understand the aspect of the two. Being a really big Dragon Ball Z fan, I was like, nobody can kill Goku.
Right.
Nobody can. But then you learn about the actual immense history of Superman and the way he ends up gaining his powers and stuff. Like, Goku has no chance with that kind of stuff.
It's fun to actually say, just because I like this character doesn't mean they'll win. Just because I like this thing doesn't mean it's better. I think stuff like that is absolutely brilliant, and you get people who are even more like fanatical in the best sense of the word to sit there and break things down in a way that I would never have time to do, but they can express it to me in a 15-minute video that I can suddenly be like, oh, dude, that's incredible. That's great. Yeah. People that are far smarter than I can sit there and assess the ending of a video game or a movie or a book way better than I could, and I can go, oh, shoot, I'm too dumb to understand that, but now that this guy explained it, I feel like I'm on top of the world.
And it makes you feel better that you kind of can understand it better now, too.
Yeah, I think that's great. Again, that's everybody's lane. Everybody's got their thing that they can sit down and analyze. In a sense, it's almost like somebody explaining poetry to me. I can read a book and I would say I'm fairly well read, but also if you read poetry to me and you say, what's the underlying meaning? I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
In school, that was never my thing. But I could do creative writing just fine. I could enjoy creative writing, but analyzing poetry, absolutely not my deal.
Yeah, especially with some like the way some books and stuff were written back then. Like, do you really think the Iliad is supposed to be made the way it is now? Like, if you read it and you're just like, oh, I get all these stories and I get all the meanings to it. Probably not, because it's probably in a different aspect of when they first created it.
Sure.
And it blows me away that it's just like, well, maybe we can adapt it to a new kind of sense.
Well, so did you ever read the book The Odyssey growing up?
Well, I did do it. Well, again, I love YouTube, but that's those things where I just like, hey, let me Google about it and let me find out more about what I know, because I've heard stories of the Odyssey and I've heard different aspects of it too. Like one of the greatest things I like to say is that I learned more from TV than I did from my actual parents.
Sure.
Because I mean, you see episodes like The Simpsons and stuff where they actually broke down like the travels of Homer and all this stuff. Like, you get to hear his you get to hear the stories of why this all happened, but yet in a sense where you're just like, oh, I get it. Instead of having to read this complex book where these words and stuff are kind of like misleading and I don't get the exact terminology of this, I got to experience it in a way that did give me knowledge and did give me a place to go with it.
And that's what we just touched upon with video games, is that accessibility, like that sort of entry point, the icebreaker. And if The Simpsons can make you say, oh, that's the story of the Odyssey, well, suddenly I understand it a little bit better because they've given it into a way that I can understand.
Very true.
Have you seen the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
That's the Odyssey.
Okay.
So, like, it's literally an adaptation of the Odyssey.
See, now all I'm thinking is, like, Clash of the Titans, heck yeah.
Right, yeah, it's very exciting to think of, like, Perseus killing Medusa, but, like, when you watch a movie like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and you get to see the Cyclops, it's represented by, like, a man in torn overalls with one eye. The story is like the same thing, but just in a fun, new, expressive way. And I love when media can take the opportunity to do stuff like that and say, well, this book might be hard for everybody to digest, but like, well, what if this game or this TV show or this movie express it in a way that
gets the sparks flying.
Suddenly somebody can look at it and go, oh, I really like that story. And it's like, cool, that's the story of this retold in a way that you can understand.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great method of storytelling. And I know when people get sick of, oh, Hollywood should stop doing remakes and, this and that and the other thing, it's like, well, chances are most of the stories that are being told are retellings from elsewhere. But you're attached to them because that was your experience with it.
Very true.
Disney needs to stop remaking movies. Most movies that Disney makes are retellings of things they've already, that have existed.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But because you watched the Little Mermaid cartoon, you didn't read the novel, and you don't want them to remake it because your memory is the cartoon. That's your entry point, and that's fine. But let other people who need a new entry point, enjoy that.
Yeah, especially now with the, what is it called, live action of all these movies and stuff too. Like, I love how people get so mad because, like, Aladdin was horrible. It was the worst live action movie ever.
Yeah.
Your opinion. You didn't like it, but yet that little kid that went to the theater for the first time, he probably was super amazed to see one of his favorite actors, Will Smith, portray a character that he never knew about.
Correct. And if he feels the way about that movie the way you felt watching the Robin Williams version, it's valid.
That's it.
It doesn't have to be for you. You know, you don't have to like the remake of the thing that was already remade.
Right.
That's fine.
Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, going back to the video game aspect, there is probably other remakes of fishing games and stuff. But that Super Black Bass...
That was the one. Yeah, that's the experience that he had. He could find a technically better, you know, fishing game in the year 2008 as opposed to, like, a 1993 Super Nintendo game.
Right.
But that wasn't the experience, you know? And that's fine because some new kid's going to pick up a new fishing game and play it with his dad, and 20 years down the line, remember it just as fondly. That's
the beauty of, like, us as humans.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, ta-da.
Yeah, here we are.
That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, man, we've actually been here for an hour and a half.
Right on.
Just having some fun, just having some chats.
Having a great time. I love just talking about stuff.
That's the beauty of this podcast. Every time I ask somebody to come onto my podcast, they're like, oh, what's your podcast about? I don't know.
Whatever.
Whatever we want to start talking about, because everybody has some kind of story or some kind of like experience or even some kind of knowledge to bring into the table that somebody didn't think about that in that aspect. Now I love the way that you told me that how that person brought the video game is like, I love the way that video game made me feel as a kid. Like now I keep thinking about StarCraft 64.
Dude, and if that's your experience, then you done right. And I'm going to tell you something right now. This is something that I see often. I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan. I love the original comic. I love the 87 cartoon. I love the live action movies, even the ones that are not so good.
Look like ogres.
Yeah. And but what I love about the Ninja Turtle universe is that it's not just one version of the Turtles. It's a lot of different versions. There are so many iterations of Ninja Turtles out there for consumable media. And like this new one came out a year or two ago called Rise of the TMNT. And it's like, you know, more of like a Cartoon Network looking, way more juvenile, filled with humor version of the Turtles. And it's great.
Nice.
But people are pooping all over it because, well, it's not like the gritty 1990 movie. Oh, well, it's not, you know, like as dark as the 2003 cartoon. It's not, you know, as noir as the comic. That's fine. Those already exist, and those will continue to exist. Those will perpetually exist. So why is this version taking away from that which already exists?
Right.
And it's not.
And that's the beauty of finding it, is because you might want to go in deeper and find out more about the Turtles' history.
Correct. And if some kid, you know, I was 6 years old when the Turtles cartoon came out. If some kid now watches Rise of the TMNT and decides, oh, I like Ninja Turtles, holy shit, man, he's got a huge history of stuff that he can now enjoy.
There you go.
And if that entry point makes him a fan, don't stop him. Don't poop all over his tastes. Let him enjoy it and let him become possibly a bigger fan than you. Even if you're the self-proclaimed biggest fan in the world, don't you want to see somebody love it just as much, if not more? I would think so.
Very true.
You know?
Especially with how much people are in this world. Like, you cannot categorize yourself as the best knowing or the best fan.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's over 7 billion people.
Yeah.
1% is probably more of a fan than you are.
Good luck, yeah.
That's a big number.
Being number one, right, yeah. And I just love seeing people like stuff. I love seeing people have a good time. And that was the most important aspect of that interaction with that kid, is I realized that, like, whatever I like is irrelevant unless it's about me experiencing it. Whatever this kid likes, he needs to like it, he needs to love it. And that's what I want. My job is not to cultivate my tastes to anybody. You know, if somebody asks my opinion, sure. But I'll still never poop on something. I'll still never tell somebody that something is bad. I want to find what makes people happy, and I want them to be happy with it. That's my job. My job is to help people enjoy things. Nothing more.
That's it.
You know? And if somebody doesn't enjoy things, I want to help them find something that does.
There you go, guys. You guys hear that? It's all about finding it and just loving it in your own sense of values.
That's right. And you don't have to love it, but if you do, I've done my job.
There you go. Is John, is there any closing notes you want to give? Anything? Do you want to plug some stuff in right away? Let them know what's happening with you and how where they can find you, where they can find more of what you do and stuff.
Sure. I mean, we have some social media, and I'm present on it, but I'm actually not nearly as like into it right now as I was.
Come on.
Because I've got, you know, I'm working all the time now. We just opened up New Game Plus 3 weeks ago, and that has been like where I've been focused for the past 6 months. And I'm still there. I'm there basically Monday through Friday. If you want to come in, hang out, play some games, I'm there.
That's what it's at.
Right next door to Gamers Anonymous on Constitution in Wyoming, here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And again, I just want to see people come in and have a good time. You know, our store has sort of like an 80s kind of vibe to it. We did sort of like a vaporwave kind of thing. And it's, you know, we don't have like main lights on, so it's a very cool, welcoming environment with a lot of like LEDs and neons. But then in the very, very back, we have this contrast where it's like an 80s living room. And we've got like a Super Nintendo and a 64 and a Genesis and an NES and an old PC running, you know, DOS on it. I just added the GameCube to it recently, but it's on a, you know, an old furniture CRT television. And it's a great experience that a lot of the older crowd, you know, walks into and goes, oh man, I remember this.
I'm just going to go sit down.
Dude, we got a couch right there and you can just sit down and just, grab a 64 controller, play StarCraft.
Yeah,
it's there. It's there. I put actually EverDrive cartridges into all of our systems, so we don't have to worry about cartridges everywhere. But we have access to all the games that people might remember. You come in, and you play StarCraft 64.
There you go. Just get a little bit of the niche of history right there.
It's kind of fun, yeah, to experience games that, like, you know, we all have emulators and access to these things. I'm not, you know, but there's something about experiencing it like in the best original way possible, which is original hardware on the televisions it's meant to be. That still will feel different than sitting in front of a computer playing on like a gamepad.
Right, where you're just like, I can hook up my PS4 controller
Yeah.
to it. It feels cool, but
Yeah.
it's not the same experience.
It's convenient, but it is a different experience. That's correct. And so there's something about, you know, the slight blurriness of the TV that sort of adds to like, hey, this is just how it was.
Right.
And again, maybe that's old man me talking, but it's a fun experience because it is distinct and it is authentic.
It's that damn movie theater experience.
Yeah. I'm hearing right now, by the way, that AMC theaters are looking to like rent out theaters for like $99, and you could take like 10 friends and go rent the theater and watch or play whatever you want.
What?
Yeah. I just read this the other day. I haven't really looked into it, but I had seen this and I thought that would be really great for like, you know, Halo or Smash Brothers or, you know, something like huge.
Especially like big immersive tournaments and stuff.
That'd be incredible.
Like you just start running things more, and it's just like, hey guys, the finals are gonna be at the AMC theater.
Oh, yeah. One weekend, everybody shows up there, and I actually don't know what their social distancing policy is, so I don't know how many people they could smack into a theater, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So I mean, something I might have to look into more because maybe down the road we'll do something like that.
Well, with that being said, then is there like something that like, okay, I'm going back to the conspiracy side.
Sure.
If the government releases a vaccine within the next year to 6 months,
Sure.
is that something you would think about taking to help your experience of your gaming center? Or would you say the government actually enforces a little bit more? Like businesses have to have these vaccines or records of people having these vaccines to be able to enter in more of a regular capacity kind of thing instead of 25% limited and stuff. Like, hey,
Sure.
well, guess what? If you guys all have vaccinations and you can pull the ID on your phone, everybody can come in. Everybody can just go experience that.
Oh man, that's almost dystopian. But I mean, I feel like if I'm presented with the opportunity to potentially save lives or keep people healthy, by default, my response is to want to do it.
Okay.
Obviously, you know, like it's so hard to know exactly what's going on with these things. I'm not too much of a conspiracy theorist myself, to be totally honest, but I feel like if I have the opportunity to try to do my best, I have to do my best.
That's true.
And, you know, I guess I don't know all the answers, but I will do it when applicable.
Because I kind of feel in that same sense too, because I work in a medical facility.
Sure.
So I'm pretty sure it's going to be, I'm more than positive that I will have to be one of the first people to get this vaccine.
Sure.
To be able to even work in this kind of society, this kind of nuanced way of working with people.
Right.
Because right now, and in the medical facility, that's why I asked you, is like, oh, are you COVID cool? Like I've been tested so many times,
Right,
man. If you're
every day you're getting tested.
if you're not comfortable, I can bring a paper that says I'm negative. So, but in that aspect though, it's kind of the way of life now.
It's interesting that it basically is our current normal. Like we'd like to go back to normal, but this is right now the normal.
It's probably going to be like this for a while.
And normal will shift consistently throughout our lives, and this is just where our normal is right now.
I don't know. Yeah, people can't really get in a sense in their head where this is like, oh, this is kind of a negative thing. I mean, there's other countries that have kind of always been doing this.
Yeah, it's negative for us because we're inconvenienced. And I mean, of course, that sucks, but like, it's not, you know, you just be responsible with it. And keep other people in mind as well, and that's kind of like the best you can do.
Because the mask thing blows me away. Like, just put on a mask. Like, why are people freaking out so much about it? You see people they say that they have very bad breathing patterns, or they can't even breathe with the mask on, but yet this is just something that you're not used to. Maybe if you do
Right.
get used to it, or it does happen a little bit longer than we have to, then maybe you won't complain about it within 6 months, or maybe you're not going to complain about it in a year.
Right.
But we live in America. That's where people can complain about it
Correct.
in 6 months and in a year.
People do. And I mean, think about the other countries that have, taken the precautions and are now sort of like, all right, we've evened out, we're good to go. Life can resume as normal. And we're over here being obstinate and weird. And it's interesting because I'm just going to say this, and it's going to be too controversial. There was a weird, ironic situation I ran into once, and this is not at my store. This is at a Walmart, and there was this guy who was making a huge deal about wearing a mask in Walmart, and the greeter at the front was like, "Man, you got to put on your mask. You can't come in." He was making a big stink and being really loud and obnoxious. And as he walked away back to his car, on the back of his T-shirt it said, "Freedom isn't free," and there was an American flag, and I was like, "Wow." Like what a phenomenally ironic scenario to witness. And it was just like, I'm not going to say anything. I was going to go in and buy my cereal or whatever I was doing. But like, what an interesting thing to observe.
And I feel like people are just taking that into a really bad account. Like they really just they're thinking that their liberties and stuff are being taken away, but they're precautions. Like, freedom, if you want to be free, then just take the precautions to do the things that free people are doing, because how much is it not a free thing?
Sure.
Like literally, I don't know. Again, I'm one of those people too that I'm just like, I know I have to wear it. Not only that, I know it makes other people feel comfortable when I wear it.
Sure.
Like it's just like the seatbelt now. It should be done.
It's a standard
It's
because
something that everybody does.
if you want to play it as safe as possible anyway, then why would you not? One of the most interesting arguments I've heard, though, and this is one of our more little asides, is people say, well, the flu, does this and that and the other. And it's like, okay, but if you have the flu, you're not going out without some protection.
Or you don't go out at all.
Or you don't go out at all, mostly. Yeah, like whatever the case, if you have the flu, you're probably taking proper precautions to stay home because that's what the responsible thing to do is. So it's a really interesting argument that comes up. And again, I can't tell anybody what to do. I can say, hey, this is how it might affect people. And even that, like I'm not the objective authority on anything. Keep in mind just what your actions do to others. And if you're okay with maybe harming people, I guess do that. But
That's a frame of mind at that point.
yeah, really. And I'm certainly, I got no jurisdiction over that, but just be aware of it, I guess, and then base your decisions off of that.
Exactly, too, because I feel like, again, it's just something comforting for people. Like, I'll wear the mask because I know the person next to me is a little bit more paranoid about the COVID, or maybe he was affected by COVID, and now he wants to know that people around him are safer.
Sure.
So guess what? I'm okay doing that for the person to help them have a better experience with whatever they're doing, especially if it comes to gaming or if it comes to being able to be closer with them.
Yeah.
Like I used to love, I kind of do in a sense, but I like teaching guitar, and I like people coming over and be like, hey, let me show you how to play guitar. Let me show you some cool stuff.
Sure.
But if it makes you feel safer, that I wipe down the guitars, that I wear a mask while we do it, that maybe we've never met, but yet you still want this safety precaution.
Yeah.
All for it, man.
Yeah.
I want you to have the best experience when it comes to learning this instrument.
Correct.
Same thing with the video game, same thing with movie experiences. If you want to feel safe, you should do these things for these people so that they can experience it, and maybe they've never experienced it yet.
It's just courtesy.
Because, I mean,
It's just a courtesy.
there's probably a bunch of people that have never really gone to a gaming lounge, gaming center.
Sure.
That they've never experienced it.
Sure.
But now they're in this sense where, okay, I want to do it, but that means that there's people around me playing video games too.
Sure.
I can't play video games by myself. Like, okay, don't worry, because there's people that wear masks. Everything's very safe.
And I enforce that, and if you're going to be an asshole about somebody else's comfort, maybe you shouldn't be here.
That's
and
true.
luck we've never had to do that. Look, it's only been a couple weeks, but
Oh yeah, you guys are gonna get ready.
inevitable at some point. But I mean, it's your ability to accommodate to somebody's comfortable doesn't strip you of freedom. It means you're not being an asshole.
There you go.
That's all.
And
That's really all there is to it.
That's all there is to it, guys. Okay. With that being said, give those plugs. Tell them where they can find you.
Cool.
Let them know what they can do. And hey, man, if you're ever down to come back again, there's always something to talk about.
There's always something to talk about.
We didn't even branch the wall.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
like usually
music up here.
If anything, I'm just like, hey, is there anything that you like or see that's going on the wall? We end up talking about some of the stuff.
Sure.
So there's always something to talk about when you come on to MuseMe TV.
Sure. No, I'm totally down.
So I'm really thankful that you were able to come because again,
Thanks for having me.
especially COVID now, it's so hard to get people to come in.
Sure.
But I got to let them know, like, this is COVID safe.
Mm-hmm.
I've been tested. I get tested every 5 days, people. It's just what happens. So there's no bad things going on here.
Good.
And I do appreciate you coming in.
Yes.
And having your opinion on stuff because everyone has an opinion and it should be listened to. And this doesn't happen anymore within society. We don't really have a conversation where we sit down and talk about anything.
Right.
Now it's literally like, hey, let me text you about this.
Sure.
Where's the new? That's why I was kind of a little disappointed when you're like, hey, let's do a Zoom call. I was like, what? I won't see that facial expression the right way.
That's true. It is a very different. It is literally it's emulator versus authenticity. You know.
Very true.
Yeah.
So I'm again very humbled and very grateful that you came in.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And let these people know where they can find all this good stuff.
Very good. So the best way to get a resource for anything that we're doing is through garetro.com, the Gamers Anonymous website, mostly because it will redirect you to appropriate venues depending on your interest. It'll lead to our Twitter, to our Instagram, to our Facebook pages. And for like the best lowdown for all of it, the GA Retro community page on Facebook is kind of like our central hub of communication for basically everything. If you want to find out like what events we're doing, or just, what kind of sales we're having, or, promotional things, or just speaking with other community members, that's sort of like the most active part of the community, bar none.
Okay.
So check us out on Facebook, GA Retro community page. And, just swing on by the store. Come on in and talk to my employees. They're all super friendly. They're all super nice. Come talk to me over at New Game Plus. I'd be more than willing to hang with people and chat with people, explain what we do, show people the games we've got. And
put me on the list for one of those shirts.
Oh, dude, we've got all kinds of nice shirts. Come on down. We've got apparel. I've got a New Game Plus beanie. I've got actually my employee shirt. You can't get one of these.
Don't. I'll get us one, guys.
Because you'll sweet talk me somehow.
Because I like putting I want to get more people's input and more of their merch on here.
Cool.
Like just so that everybody has an avenue of like where we come from too.
Sure.
Like it's a local business and I want to promote it as much as I can and I want people to come and enjoy this experience because I'm a big nerd. I'm a big video game fan and everybody should experience it in a way that doesn't really happen anymore.
Sure.
So
and if you go to our website as well too, the garetro.com, we have an Etsy link up at the top, and that has a site which we've got a ton of hats and shirts that we've designed, some hoodies as well too, and we're constantly sort of expanding that. So if you like video game apparel, every single thing that we've thrown up there is something that we've done ourselves. And so I'd love for people to... It thrills me when I see people around town either wearing our hats, wearing our shirts, or like sporting one of our bumper stickers in the car. I always feel really good about that.
That's always a good feeling, right?
Yeah.
With that being said, here you go. Take one of these stickers of
thank
MuseMe
you.
TV.
Appreciate that.
You guys are so awesome. Thank you, everybody that was in the comment section, everybody that stayed in for the chat. You guys are awesome. Again, make sure to go check them out. Everything Gamers Anonymous, New Games Plus. It's some great things going on right now.
Thank you.
MuseMe TV, guys. You guys know what to do. Just literally Google MuseMe TV. I swear I will be the first thing that pops up. First thing, you guys can do it. We got everything going on Twitch. We got the YouTube channel and also the Facebook page. So stay in tune and we'll get some more guests on here soon, guys. Peace. I love you all. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.